This is a presentation that will cover the tips for timed writing and written exams. A lot of times in college, we're given exams that have a definite time frame. We have to write under pressure. It's often stressful for people. Sometimes you don't know how to prepare. Could be for a midterm, could be for a final, could just be a timed writing exercise in your class. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for an English course. You often do these things in a history class or psychology class, one of the sciences, any of the humanities. So this presentation should be able to help you both for an English class as well as any of your other courses where you have written exams that you have to write under pressure, under a timed format. There are 4 basic steps for any timed assignment for writing. And to break those down, it would be to prepare, to plan, to frame, and to proofread. And I'm going to cover each of these separately. And note as this presentation moves forward that I'm basing it on a preparation for a 90-minute exam. Now, if you have a 2-hour exam, which some of them are, you'll just need to adjust the time frames I give accordingly, just to allot for 30 extra minutes. The first step that you need to cover is to prepare, and that's basically studying, and this is something that happens before the test begins. You know, some people need a lot of days ahead of time to prepare. Other people can study and prepare the night before. You know the type of student that you are, the type of learner that you are. So allow yourself the appropriate amount of time to complete these tasks so that it works into your comfort level. You always want to go back and review the notes and any annotations that you've made in your textbook. This will help you when you start writing. You know, if you've gone through and read through everything, put a few things to memory, it's going to be helpful to you. If the exam you're taking is going to be an open book or open notes test, what I would suggest doing is during this prepare time as you're studying, I would go through with sticky notes or post-its and flag and tag the key sections and passages within your notes and within your textbook, things that you believe will be valuable to you as you write. When I've set in on a lot of timed exams, I'll see students often scramble through the book, trying to, going through page after page after page, looking through the index, the table of contents, because they're looking for something they can't find. If you've done the work ahead of time and you've placed little flags or notes in the pages so that you can find the information faster, it's going to help you because you're not going to be wasting time and killing time during the test flipping through pages. You're going to have it right at your fingertips. So always go through and tag the portions of the textbook of your notes that you believe will be most important. Now, often our exams are closed book, and when that happens, I always suggest that students try to memorize 3 to 5 useful details or quotes that could be used in a number of ways, that could show up in a variety of ways within your essay when you write. Because instructors, professors, they often like to see that you have been paying attention in class and that you are able to use the information that you've obtained in class and reuse it, incorporate it into your work. So something you may want to consider, if there are some general facts in the class you've been taking, if it's a psychology class, it may be that Sigmund Freud is credited, for many of the ideas that began what we consider to be modern psychology, something along those lines. Any sort of general fact or detail will be helpful. Also think about concepts that were emphasized repeatedly by the instructor throughout the course. We've all been in classes where professors will say something over and over and over again. Well, the professor's saying that for a reason. So commit that to memory. Try to memorize what was said, the details that seem to come up over and over again, because those will most likely be able to be used in an essay like this. Also, if you have useful quotes from notable individuals in the field or from the class that you've taken, if it's a history course, an American history course, you may want to use a quote that you memorized from a current president or a former president. That may be helpful. Just a place within the context of the essay that you're writing. But any of these ideas that you can commit to memory, anything that you can hold in your memory bank, that gives you a little more preparedness, helps you when you get nervous. You'll have it on hand. You can use it. It may not be useful at all, but chances are you'll be able to use some of these details. Now, when you show up for the test, the first thing you're going to do, the first 10 minutes you're going to spend planning. And that's just where you're reacting to the question or questions you've received. First thing I tell everybody, Allow no more than 30 seconds to panic. You know, a lot of us don't like to have written tests or timed tests. I know I don't. No one likes to feel like they're under the gun. So just give yourself 30 seconds to just feel all that panic, all that upset, and then, take a deep breath, exhale, and let it go. That's the best thing for you, because being panicked or nervous is not going to help you through the process. Just, take a few seconds to get it out of your system and then move forward. And the first thing you do when you move forward is find a sheet of paper, use the scratch paper, use the inside of your test booklet, and all those details that you memorize, those general facts, the quotes, the things the professor said, just write those down really quickly. That way you're getting them out of your brain and you don't have to worry about holding on to them throughout the rest of the time of the essay until they're needed. If you've got them jotted down somewhere, you can always go back to them and use them from that point. That way your brain's kind of free to think about the question at hand. And once you've done that, then start brainstorming and pre-writing ideas about the question that you've been given for the exam. Okay? And to pre-write, you may want to do a thinking map or a cluster. And if you don't know what that is, you can go back to a presentation called the writing process, and I cover some details on pre-writing. But clustering is often good. Clustering sort of organizes the details as you write them down, and it may help you at a later stage in the next stage. You may also want to do a list. Any sort of pre-write that helps you. Everyone has a preference for the type of pre-write they enjoy doing, but all of these things should take about 10 minutes of time for the 90-minute exam. But just make sure you pre-write as much as possible, and the more you get down, the more it's going to help you when you begin to write. Once you've completed that stage, we're going to move to the framing stage. And to frame, it just means you're going to start structuring your essay. And this will take the most time of the exam period. You see, I've allotted 60 minutes for that. So what you want to first begin doing is looking over that pre-write and start organizing it. And the way you can organize it, you may be able to move it into a rough outline form. You also may be able to just put it into bulleted list items. If it's a cluster, it may already be organized to a large degree and you don't have to do a whole lot with it. But what you're doing here is you're organizing your ideas, because all of these organized ideas, once you've set them off, will form your essay's paragraphs. And the better you have it organized at this stage, the easier it's going to be to start writing. When we move to that writing stage, you want to follow the 5-paragraph essay model. And I've often talked about, if you've seen the other presentations, that the 5-paragraph essay model, it's not a model that you want to use when you're writing more complex papers, but for a timed writing exercise, the professor is often not looking for anything that's going to be very complex or overly embellished. We're just looking for the basics to see if you understand the concepts being put before you, if you're able to put them back and show them, demonstrate them in a writing exercise. So if you follow that 5-paragraph essay model, that should get you through. For undergraduates, it's the perfect model. Everyone expects that. We're just looking for the basic details to see that you can write well and that you know how to convey your ideas appropriately. So follow the 5-paragraph essay model. If you're writing by hand, try to double space between the lines. If you do that, that allows you to go back if you realize you've made errors later, and you can make corrections by writing in the lines that you've left blank. If you write it all close together, it's going to be tough, and you're going to start erasing or trying to scratch through stuff, mark through stuff, and everything's going to get jumbled. So always try to double space if you're writing by hand. The next thing I always advise students to do, the exam question is probably crafted in such a way that it's very thorough and very complete in terms of what the professor's looking for. So if that's the case, always try to use that exam question to structure your introduction and your thesis statement. If you just do a few little twists and turns, a few little tweaks of that exam question, you'll have a very effective thesis statement at least, possibly components of your introduction as well. So always pay attention to that exam question. Don't throw it away, because you can use that to form that intro and thesis. The next thing you want to do, just like with any 5-paragraph essay or any essay in general, is you want to create strong topic sentences that introduce your body paragraphs. If you always keep in mind that an essay is sort of like a roadmap for your reader, for your audience, you want them to be able to follow it carefully to understand your plan. The topic sentences give a very clear guide, provide a very clear guide to the paragraph that you're discussing. So your body paragraph is it relies heavily on that topic sentence, and the topic sentence needs to relate back to the thesis statement. So as long as you're keeping those things in check, you'll have an effective essay. This is where you're going to go back and use your pre-writing from the rough outline, the details that you've done. You're going to use all that information to flesh out those body paragraphs. Once you have your strong topic sentences, the information that you've written down, a lot of it can be incorporated here to flesh out the paragraphs as you're writing. This is also the place where you want to try to weave in those memorized details if possible. Now, it may not be relevant, and if it's not, don't force it. But if you see a way that you can use the information, always provide it. The other thing that you want to always do is elaborate. Don't hold back and try to expect the professor or whoever's going to read this to guess what you mean. Be certain that your reader will understand what you have to say. In order to do that, as opposed to shying away from information or holding back details, always elaborate. Follow through with what you want to discuss. Make certain that someone will understand that you know what you're talking about. If an example comes to mind, if it relates, try to get it in there. The more you elaborate, the more you're ensuring that, or the more you're taking the chance that the professor is going to understand what you have to say and that you understand the material. Finally, you want to conclude by reiterating the key points you've covered, and also be sure that you explain why your ideas matter. Why was this essay important? What details have you provided here that enhance someone's knowledge of the subject that's being asked of you, of the question? Always be certain that you have concluded effectively in order to ensure you're gonna succeed with this test. Finally, the last step that you want to do is you want to proofread, and always proofread. I can't tell you how many times I see people, speed through their essay, write it up, and just close the booklet, hand it in, never looking back. Try to allot yourself 20 minutes in a 90-minute exam to proofread. If you do this, then you're going to ensure that you correct all the errors and the major mistakes that you've made. A lot of times when we write quickly, we leave out words, we leave out sentences, we sometimes leave out good punctuation. If you go back and read over everything, it will help you make the corrections that need to be made, because sometimes professors will fail students simply for making too many errors. Your ideas and content may be great, but if you can't write it correctly or write it appropriately using good grammar conventions, good technique, then it really doesn't mean anything. So you want to be sure you have a very balanced essay by proofreading. Now, what I would suggest you do is review your essay by reading it in reverse. Typically when we write a paper, we have some time to step away from it before we go back to a proofreading stage. If we're proofreading immediately after we've read it, our brain, thinks we know what we're saying, because you go back and you may skip over some words, but your brain catches the word. Your brain thinks the word's there. If you read the sentence in reverse, and that means start with the final sentence and read that, then read the next to last sentence, then the sentence before that. If you read it in that order, your brain wasn't used to seeing it that way, to comprehending it that way. And so your brain will be more likely to pick up on errors or small errors that you might have made if you're reading it in reverse. If you've written it by hand, then use the double spaces when necessary to edit or correct your mistakes. That way you don't have all these huge erase marks. You don't have to strike through everything with a pen and squiggle it in the middle or in between and hope somebody can make out what it says. This will help you write more legibly. When you're finished, after you've done all the proofreading, all the steps, take a deep breath and submit it, because you've done all you can do. You've done the best you can do. Some points that you should remember: prepare for any test by studying beforehand. Can't tell you how important that is. Always give yourself time to study ahead of time. Plan by writing down the ideas. The more you've written down before you actually start drafting or writing, the better off you'll be. Organize your pre-writing to help you form paragraphs later. The more work you do ahead of time, the better off it's going to be when you actually start writing. Follow the 5-paragraph essay model. Always elaborate on details. And don't forget to proofread. If you do this, you should have a very successful timed exam experience.